And now let's move on to B. So 6B, which is the 8-mark question in this scenario. So this is again referring to Extract A. It's an examining question and it's 2 reasons. Examine 2 causes of the high cost of transporting goods between African countries. And this is what I mean. This question, you can pretty much answer it if you did GCSE geography. And of course we are going to use the extracts, but any knowledge you have, and especially if you have good economics theory, it's such an easy question. So let's think. 2 causes of the high cost of transporting goods between African countries. Now, the first one that pops into mind, like I said, with basically GCSE geography knowledge, is poor infrastructure. So infrastructure. So if you think about it, one of the main reasons for the high cost is probably like, if you've ever been to like developing countries, the roads are not as well built as, for example, in the UK. And why does that cause higher costs? Since maybe the cars get damaged more and it's just slower overall, things like problems with traffic, it's not very regulated there. So basically what I'm saying, poor infrastructure is definitely going to be one of the reasons there. There's high cost of transporting goods between African countries. And number 2, what is a 5-marker been referring to? And this is a really good skill to learn for Edexcel specifically, since a lot of these section B questions, they relate a lot to each other and you use a lot of the information you've used to answer one in the next question. So this, our 5-mark question, is talking about trade agreements. It's talking about trade liberalisation, trying to remove those trade barriers. So what could be a cause right now? If they're trying to introduce a trading bloc, what was the problem before? That there were trade barriers. And what is a trade barrier that causes high costs? Tariffs. So one problem and another reason for the high costs in transporting goods between African countries could be tariffs between countries, which therefore increase the cost of importing, which of course therefore would increase the cost of production. Now, I haven't actually looked at the extract yet, but let's have a look at the extract, see what it says, maybe help refine these ideas now. So poor infrastructure, it might give us a specific example we can use about poor infrastructure, or a specific example of a tariff. And yeah, let's have a look at extract A and see if there's anything in there. Okay, so right at the start here, it talks about queues for miles, so delays, and of course delays increase costs. Why do delays increase costs? Even the simple things, they have to pay the workers more for a task that could have got done in 20 minutes. If it takes the drivers now 2 hours, of course they have to pay the workers more. The shop, it takes longer for the producer to sell the goods since they haven't got the good in time, etc, etc. In the second paragraph, again, it talks about just what we use for the 5-mark question. And then, like we mentioned, one of the points that is probably causing these high costs are tariffs. And look what the third paragraph starts by saying. The CFTA pledges to improve trade in one or two ways, which is reducing tariffs, which shows this is one of the reasons, which means that's a 100% valid point we can use for backing up one of the reasons that it causes high cost. And like we said, the second point is, of course, here, poor infrastructure is a major barrier to trade, and here it's given us many examples. So it talks about how much land Africa has, whereas its railway network is much smaller compared to, it's not proportional to the land it has. Then again, even more application talks about port. Okay, and this quite literally shows how simple it is, this 8-mark question. So just split it up into 2 separate paragraphs. One of them talk about poor infrastructure, throw in the bit of application we just reviewed. Yeah, so one cause of the high costs of transporting goods between African countries is due to poor infrastructure. E.g, this is shown by 800,000 kilometres of the total 2.8 million kilometres of Africa are paved. E.g, firms have to pay workers more wages since they're working for longer hours. Goods may go off since transport times are so long, thus increasing the cost for firms, but therefore overall increasing the cost for firms. And that's literally all you need. These 8-mark questions, especially when it asks for 2 reasons, not much analysis is needed at all, and it's very simple, and that would pretty much be fair, and that would be pretty much perfect for 1 paragraph. And then for your second paragraph, of course, we would talk about tariffs. So how would I word this one? Another cause of high costs of transporting goods between African countries is tariffs. And I'll probably just give the example here. By reducing tariffs, the IMF predicts that intra-African trade would increase from 15 to 25%. And then just basically explain what tariff is. It's a tax on imports, therefore it increases the price of imports, therefore increasing costs for producers and costs for trading between African countries. And that would be perfect for your second paragraph, but of course that is only 6 out of your 8 marks, as your KAA only makes 6 marks in your 8-mark question, and you 2 marks for evaluation. And with evaluation, like I said, it's 2 marks. It can be very brief, very simple. So the first evaluation that pops to our mind is regarding the African regional trade agreements. So the way I would word it is saying, however, the high costs depend on the time frame, as in the long run, due to the creation of the African Regional Trade Agreement, the thing I just can't say the name of. So due to the creation of the African Regional Trade Agreement, this is going to stop or reduce tariffs thus meaning costs will go down for partner countries, meaning that it could, it's of course going to reduce the costs between countries trading in Africa. So the high costs basically depend on the time frame. As in the short run, yes, as there's no trade agreement yet. When in the long run, and maybe they can get more countries to sign up, I think they said something like 44 out of 55 have signed up. If they can get even more to sign up, it would further amplify the cost saving. Okay, so that is 8 out of 8 for the 8 mark question.